Hello there and welcome back to another CPD talk. So today what we're going to be doing is going through a specific case study revolving around anti-Wra. So what is anti-Wra and why does it matter? Then we'll cover the case study and then we'll go over what we can learn from this and how we should apply it to our everyday work with a short thanks. So this should be a relatively short CPD talk. But hopefully it'll be informative to everyone. Once you have listened to this, please remember to complete a reflective learning on it. And if you give me a copy of that reflective learning, then I will ensure that you get a certificate to show that you have actually watched it. So off we go. What is anti-Wra? So the Wra antigen, also known as Di3 or the ISBT numbers 01, 003 or 10.3, belongs to the Diego blood grouping system. The antigen is a low incidence antigen, which means that less than 0.01% of the population's red blood cells have this antigen. Therefore, people with anti-Wra have an antibody to a low incidence antigen. Anti-Wra can occur naturally or as a result of a previously sensitizing event. This can be found as both an IgM or an IgG antibody. As a result of this, it can be detected either at room temperature or by using IAT, dependent on whether it is IgM or IgG. Despite the antibody being rare, it can cause both transfusion reactions and hemolytic disease of the newborn. The transfusion reactions can be severe and can be either immediate or delayed, as well as hemolytic. So we're going to jump straight into the case study. That was just a little bit of background information. So we have a 76-year-old male who was admitted to hospital for a knee arthroplasty. This is the patient's third operation of this kind, and he has received transfusion previously as a result of these. A sample is sent to the laboratory and confirms that the patient is an ORHD positive. His antibody screen was negative. The surgeon then requests 2 units of red blood cells for a transfusion. As this patient has no previous antibody history, 2 units are electronically issued for him. After the transfusion was started, however, the ward phoned the laboratory and advised us that there was a query transfusion reaction. They were advised to stop the transfusion and send us back the unit. The pre-sample was retested and the DAT was negative. He still tested as O-pos and had a negative antibody screen. However, on arrival, the post-transfusion sample showed that he had a positive DAT, with the rest of the grouping results the same. The retrospective cross-match was also incompatible, so the unit was also DAT tested. The DAT on the unit was negative. These samples were then sent to the NHSBT for further testing. So at this point, I just want to pause the case study and I want you to think about what our current procedure is for transfusion reactions. Would there be any other tests that you would personally perform? I know I haven't mentioned about testing the blood group of the unit, but assume that has also been done. I mean, obviously you know what's going to happen here, but is there anything you think you could have done in the lab that might have picked up something extra to give the laboratory staff more information? So, the report from the NHSBT showed that this patient had developed an anti-Wra. This would mean that not only was the unit that caused the transfusion reaction Wra positive, but he must have also had a Wra positive unit previously transfused to cause this sensitization. The chances of this occurring are really, really slim. So what can we learn from this? We may not always be able to detect a patient's antibodies. This is because we only have very few red cell reagents, whereas the NHSBT, for example, are going to have lots and lots of different panels. So if during a transfusion reaction investigation you have a positive DAT or an incompatible cross-match, it is always important to send away samples for further testing, depending on your lab's own protocol. We should always exclude a patient from electronic issue if they are or have had a transfusion reaction. If the person who was investigating the case study patient hadn't activated that CXM flag, then there would have been a chance that they could have had further units and caused further issues. Finally, you can do everything correctly and follow all the procedures, but sometimes you are just unlucky. How can we apply this to our everyday work? Try to be aware of the possibilities of antibodies to low incident antigens. Although there's not much you can do in the pre-testing, if you know that they are around, then it means when you are doing the transfusion reaction investigation, then you can have a better understanding as to why things are coming up incompatible. If you are investigating a transfusion reaction and get an incompatible cross-match, but the patient is negative with the screening cells, then still attempt a panel. So obviously when you're doing the screening cells, you are only testing against 3 different red cell variants. The panel then opens up 10 more to play with. So you might be lucky that on this occasion, the batch of panel cells you have actually has one that is positive for WRA, and you might get a reaction. Even if you do, it's not going to indicate specifically what antibody that patient has, but it will give you more information. So it's always worthwhile, if you get a negative screen but positive DAT and an incompatible cross-match, and the unit that you are testing is DAT negative, that you just put on a panel to see what happens. And finally, apply this knowledge elsewhere. If you are performing a group and safe with 1 positive cell in the panel, they may have an antibody to a low incidence antigen. This is then why we exclude them from electronic issue, even though we've excluded all clinically significant antibodies. Just to add to this, we still wouldn't send those samples away, because unlike with the transfusion reaction investigation, obviously there is a chance that they're just reacting to the technology that we're using. So if we were to send that away with just 1 cell popping up as being positive, the NHSBT might test it and it might come up with a completely negative panel, and they're not going to do anything further on that. It's only if there's a specific reason for them to continue testing that they will bring out their more specific antibody panels. So if you do get one that you can exclude all clinically significant antibodies on, please don't bother to send it away, but always activate that CXM flag or exclude it from electronic issue to prevent any possible transfusion reactions. And that is it. So it was a very, very quick one. I just want to say thanks to the BBTS for the information regarding this case study, because this was not a patient that we had at our hospital. And I want to thank everyone for listening. So please do try and complete a reflective learning on this. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. I do think we're going to be trying to do a talk on low incidence and high incidence antigens and the antibody to those and how they would react. So hopefully once that has been published, this will be a good link to it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye!